Just a quick disclosure to share in conjunction with this podcast. Each of us are speaking to our personal experiences and do not consider ourselves experts and cannot offer medical, therapy, financial, or legal advice. We represent a wide range of experience on the autism spectrum and will always honor each perspective that is brought to our discussions. Our experiences, opinions, and perspectives are all unique and different and will be celebrated. Thank you so much for listening and connecting with us. Thank you. Welcome back to Navigating Adult Autism. This is part 2 of the Sibling podcast. And just a reminder, this is just a podcast with 7 moms who have a lot of perspectives, a lot of opinions, and a lot of experience. And we're just continuing our conversation with these wonderful siblings here. And I hope you listened to part 1. And now we are on part 2. And we're going to start off by talking about the R slur and other terminology that is out there that, what should we say, just kind of tick us off? Or Hannah, you want to start on that? And
yeah, I'll start
because you guys have all heard that and other names that maybe have just triggered you again and growing up and even as adulthood. And
yeah, I really think as siblings with autism, we are really kind of built-in advocates. And so from a young age, I heard that word and I don't think I really understood what it meant until probably learned off Google or something.
And we're talking about the word retarded.
Yes, for context. Yeah, it always was something that really offended me, just because when you're saying that, you're essentially saying that people who clinically are that way are stupid, and you're using it in that context. And it was just something that always made me think differently of someone when they said it. And if it was a close personal friend of mine, or if it was someone that I did have respect for, I would always try to educate them and be like, hey, you really should not say that because it's really offensive and it's really harmful for the disability community, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it is. And back in my day, I'm using that term that I thought I would never use. It was called mentally retarded, or he had mental retardation. That's when I was a little girl.
That was actually
said,
in the medical journal.
Common.
It is, yeah.
Right. And then they just deemed it not appropriate to say. But here we are. Yeah. I'm 61 and I still hear it being said. It just irritates me too. And it's not used correctly. So have you guys heard any other terms?
Growing up, I always just it bothered me no matter what, but it would always really bother me with my brother because I was like, that's not his diagnosis.
Right.
He's autistic. There's a difference.
Right.
You don't know what that means. And
right.
I'd get really hateful to people. And that was always
triggers.
Looking back on it, me saying that as little second grade Aussie, some of the little second grade kids what's a diagnosis? What words is she using?
Oh,
and I'm like, you don't know what this means. It's things we learned at an early age of what is, autism, Down syndrome, diagnoses, play therapy, speech path. We knew those things because our siblings had to go through it. And so, when I would argue with kids growing up, I think looking back at it as an adult now, it's honestly, that other kid I was arguing with probably had no idea what I was saying.
Right. You were using too big of words.
They just were okay.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. And I think what I heard from a mom today was that on the playground that's going on is when they're trying to insult another kid, or they're mad at another kid, they'll say, oh, you're just a SPED kid. Oh. You're a SPED kid. And for our listeners, SPED is special education. And so SPED is the short version. So I was like, really? And this friend of mine, she was so sweet. She felt bad even telling me that. And I said, no, I need to know that. I that's not okay.
It's crazy. That's, in the 80s and 90s, my mom would say, people would say you ride the short bus. That's the same thing. That's what I was going to bring up.
Right.
So it's the same.
Right.
And it's 20, 30 years later.
Right. And actually bringing the autism word, I did mention this in a prior podcast, so that I was somewhere and someone said there were kids fighting and arguing and they were, oh, shut up, you're so autistic. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I was at a party and I took that hurt my heart. And I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing, and so I didn't say anything, but I think the mom just kind of corrected him, but I don't know.
Right now on like TikTok, I've seen this a lot. It's like
let's
a
talk
thing.
about that.
It's a thing called like touch of the tism.
Oh,
Yes.
really?
Oh my gosh, this bothers me.
So like I'll see these things where people will be like, "Hey, future kids, I met your dad, and unfortunately, you're gonna have a touch of the tism."
Oh, really?
It's just because he likes Star Wars.
It's like
some quirky
kind of nerdy.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden now, guess what? We have a diagnosis, and it's like, okay, no.
But then they do that, and it's, like you said, somebody just because they like Star Wars, and so then you're furthering these stereotypes that aren't helpful and create more misinformation around the topic.
Right. And, Big Bang Theory, which I'm very grateful for that show, because I always say my son is a lot like Sheldon, but his IQ is not as high. But, the whole stereotypical is that they're all smart and they're all brilliant and they have behaviors. And I am a little ashamed to say I do watch Real Housewives of Orange County.
Yes. We love the Real Housewives.
Yes. Thank you, Austin. And this past week, that Tamara Barney has claimed that she's on the spectrum, which irritates the crap out of me, because she's not on the spectrum. Back in the day, it would be ODD, it would be oppositional defiance disorder, not autism, because she said since she lacks empathy that she has autism. That's not true. Not all. A lot of autistic kids have empathy and love and feel. So that is really, she's not even doing press conferences right now because of the backlash she's getting from that.
Good.
That is very insulting to me. I took that so personal. I mean, I was just livid. One, because I probably watched the show and I'm not a fan of hers anyway.
So how do you guys feel about people going on TikTok and Instagram and they're saying that they have autism has never been tested?
I think that a lot of people, this is just my opinion, but I think that a lot of people want to be a part of something or want a diagnosis in order to either like give them a reason why they're acting that way or an explanation. And I think it's just modern times, and now people are thinking differently about autism, and they'll take one trait and run with it.
Right.
Like you were saying, like she was saying she lacked empathy. Well, that could just be part of who you are. They take one trait and they run with it, and it's offensive. I think
It's the same thing as when somebody like is, somebody's like, "Oh, I'm just really bad with names," and it's like, so that's the excuse why I never have to remember your name.
right.
I'm just really bad with names. And so I've heard people do that. Like that one thing. It's like, oh, I get really sensitive to the lights. So, and it's like, okay, like,
Yeah. Which is how Nicole, I'm just, before you speak, your mom has voiced that too. And so has Heather Woodring. That's why we did the profound autism, is that, Heather is still wiping her son's bottom, and that will never change. And so no one talks about that on TikTok, or no one talks about
They never talk about the ugly part.
The ugly part. And I think as moms, we talked about it, that it needs to come back out, and we need to start talking about it more and showing that it's not all the good doctor and it's not all Sheldon. It's, Or even, I think Demi Moore's daughter just came out. I think she has autism now too. I don't really know about much about that. But anyway, so.
I think, if I can
go
chime
ahead.
in with that same thought, I think too, people, they look for things to connect to, like, oh, I do that, I must have this. But I think what they're not understanding is that you can struggle with maintaining eye contact, but maybe you're just shy. They don't understand the severity of these symptoms and these different traits that individuals who are diagnosed have. Because it's like, sure, it's uncomfortable, but I can push past it. It's like, okay, good for you. Not everybody can do that. With Nathan, he will pick his fingers raw because he cannot stand having any kind of loose skin on his fingers. I'm like, yeah, people can't stand that. They're like, oh yeah, I'm so bad at picking at my nails and breaking my nails. But most people will stop before their fingers get bloody.
Right.
Nathan will not stop. So I think there's that key aspect that's missing. And it is important, I think, for awareness to be spread because, maybe some people have realized, oh, wait a minute, I have been undiagnosed. But they take steps to actually investigate it versus those that just immediately slap the label on themselves and go, okay, cool, now I have an excuse for when I don't act like society expects me to act.
Right. Right.
It's a weird gray area that I think that unfortunately too many people are just leaping over without even thinking about what it actually means.
Right. What do you think the answer is, guys? Are you going to flash? Oh, go ahead, Colby. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you're good. I was just saying, I'd love to chime in. I have kind of a unique perspective on it because I see a lot of these parents at school chiming in and saying that they all want I work in a real low income school district, and so they really want their kids to be diagnosed with autism. And the amount of because they will get so many more services, and they don't care about the stigma anymore because they just want this extra support. And then as far as TikTok and stuff, I think people just are grasping at fame and they want to feel special, and they don't understand the true reality of what it means to have autism. And autism, in my eyes, I think of it as a sliding scale. You're somewhere on the scale, if you're nonverbal, and so you have the really extreme, but you can still have, it used to be Asperger's. I'm a sped teacher, so I deal with all the name changes and everything. And, now it's profound. It used to be severe. And as far as going back to that, I cut kind of some older people some slack if they say the R word. I'm like, okay, how are you saying it? That's what I care about. Like, are you saying it in a derogatory form, or are you like, is that really how you haven't changed with time? And if so, okay, like maybe you should change, but like, I kind of cut them a little bit of slack.
Okay. Well, that's nice of you.
That's a good point, though, like depending on how they say it.
Yeah. Depends on how they say it. Because like I've had, people say it in a mean, awful way. And I've even, I remember growing up, I even had, my grandpa that he didn't get it. He didn't understand what autism was. And so he would say some not great things. And I just never, ever really loved that or understood that.
Yeah. Just like some terminology is just not okay anymore, which some of it's good. Yeah. I get that. But yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's true.
And I think like talking about like people who are grasping at stuff and the TikTok and the blah, blah, blah. I think the other piece of it too, from like our end, like Nathan talked about earlier, like these people like are like, oh, I'll say this and maybe I do and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you don't know what we as siblings and our family and all that had to go through to get that diagnosis. The paperwork we have to fill out every year to make sure that he still gets money from the state and that he gets placement. And it's like, you self-diagnose that and you're making it quirky. And then it's like, yeah, we're sitting over here, doing 4 hours worth of paperwork so that your brother can stay where he lives right now. Yeah.
Right. And not only that, not only that, but when you have all of these people who are, suddenly clamoring and hopping onto the trend of it, you make a field where it's already hard enough to be taken seriously even harder.
Right.
Because now now people know like, oh, it's a TikTok trend. You're not being serious. And it's like, no, we are the actual but actually autistic, which I also like hesitate to use that because people are using that on TikTok as well. But it still makes it makes the process 1,000 times harder for families, for individuals, and it's infuriating.
Well, I'm glad you guys are infuriated. So we're trusting you to take care of that problem.
It is sad because TikTok and things like that are meant to be this place of community. And I mean, especially in my job, as a speech language pathologist, I'm on an autism diagnostic team. And so we do autism assessments. It takes a long time to get in to do one. And if you're an adult, we have a lot of parents that come in with their children and they recognize characteristics from themselves when we're asking about their kiddos. So we have a long diagnostic interview where we're asking all these questions, trying to get to the root of what the difficulties are. And when they answer yes for their kids, they think, but I did that too. And they think about their difficulties. And so I think it's possible. We see this in the research, especially that autistic women, they're getting diagnosed later and later because they present differently and they mask a little bit better than the boys do. And so they get missed, unfortunately, and the assessments that we have missed them. And so they can recognize this, and TikTok, it can be a great place where we're finding, other women, especially that have had these shared experiences and how validating that is and finding community. And that is fantastic. But then you get all that misinformation as well. And you run in like Nicole was saying, you say you're autistic, people roll your eyes, or everybody's autistic these days, and then that's really invalidating to you.
Yes, that's frustrating. Let's jump into the behaviors. That's a good word, isn't it? What behaviors did your siblings have, and are they still having behaviors? How do you handle the behaviors?
Austin's looking at me and laughing.
I was going to say Nathan has, yeah.
Okay. Do they still? Who wants to? Nathan, go ahead.
I can go first. Well, I think I said in the last episode, not wearing clothes.
Right.
Elopement was huge, and the thing that terrified me the most. We lived on a farm for a long time. And he's always running to water, but there's a lot of obstacles between the house and the water. And for some reason, always wanting to run out to the road. And where we lived, the gravel road, it ended on kind of a major road between two hills, and the cars would just fly down. And I mean, he could be hit so fast they wouldn't be able to see him. And he's just constantly going to the end of the road. And I'm constantly running after him. Mom's running after him. We're getting on the four-wheeler. We're chasing him down. He's standing on the road, buck-ass naked. Doesn't care that a car could hit him. I think that was so scary was we had no sense of danger. And during the break, I was talking to Austin, we're drawn to water. He would jump into a swimming pool and just sink to the bottom and just sit there.
Oh, really?
He would. And he would probably drown and not realize that he's drowning and just be so happy because under the water, that's just his sensory heaven. That's just where he wants to be. He had a lot of self-injury towards himself. And then as he got a little older, he started communicating, I want you out of my space, by biting and scratching. And so I still have a lot of scars on my forearms and things. And then, I had language. And so I'm yelling at him. And why are you doing this? Stop it. Quit being a jerk. And he's not picking up on that at all. And so I got to the point I started to bite back. And so, and there's one fight that we had in particular. It was probably 10 years old, and Toy Story was all the rage at the time. And we had moved to a house, and I finally, I had my own room, and I got to do whatever I wanted. And so I had all my toys just in their spot like Toy Story. That's what I wanted. And he came in, he was a walking tornado. Our house was never clean, just destroyed everything in the bedroom. And I was so mad, and I pushed him first, and then he bit me, and I grabbed hold of his arm, and I just bit him as hard as I could. And it was I was almost feral. I mean, I was so angry at him. And I don't think it was just about the room. I think that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. It was just years of abuse and putting up with his bullshit. And I was just so done. And I bit him hard, and I wanted him to hurt. And it was a really scary feeling. And he never stopped moving. He went to his corner, I went to my corner, and we're just sitting there in our respective corners just bawling. We're just bawling. And my mom comes in, and she's looking one corner, she's looking over at the other side. She's like, you okay? It's okay? I'm like, it's fine, Mom. It's fine.
Took care of it.
Took care of it. All good. But, kind of talking about other Zachary and how Mom's still wiping his bottom and things. What a lot of people don't realize is that sometimes kiddos, especially as profound as Zach was, especially back then, they poop on everything.
True.
Everything.
That's true.
And so you could wake up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water, and you might step on something. And it would get into the vents. It would smear it all over the walls. On the walls, yep. And so that's one of those things. We're not talking about that enough. Right. We're talking about Sheldon Cooper. We're not talking about we're smearing poop on the walls. That was a big thing. Pica is another big one. We lived on a farm. We had lots of cows. Cow manure went into our mouth, and we ingested it. And so you're constantly wiping that off of his face. And, when he was a kid, he swallowed a whole tube of toothpaste. And so you're calling the emergency room, and they say, call poison control. So you call poison control, and they say, call the emergency room. I said, we did. They told us to call you. Well, I don't know. I guess just monitor it.
Hopefully it's okay.
Okay. Why do we have a poison control? Why is this number on the back of the? Because they don't think somebody's actually going to eat an entire tube of toothpaste. Or my favorite is, well, why'd you let him do that?
That question.
I hate that question. That makes me so livid.
It's the judgment. Like I actually, coincidentally, Nathan, my brother also had a water instinct, which was, it only lasted for a couple years, but anytime he saw running water, he had an impulse to jump in, even in the most unsafe situations. And I don't know if maybe he was like your brother and it was like the sensory of being under the water. I don't know what it was, but it was always the public shame and confusion and just, I mean, there were other behaviors that happened in public too, where I was like, these people just do not understand. Like, this is kind of an iconic story in the Holcomb household. But one time we were at Lowe's. Zion was probably 4, I was 5, and Zion saw a display toilet. And naturally, you're in your 4-year-old mind, if you gotta go, there's a toilet right there. Like, he thought it'd be fine. So he goes and takes a shit in the display toilet at Lowe's. And my mom had to clean it out and get on her knees. And like, I just remember looking after infant baby child, my brother Caleb, and just having people stare at us walk by. And I was just like, I don't know what to even think of this, but I still remember it so vividly. And it's the public, like, I'm sure you guys can relate to just like people in public judging you. And
you remember the first stare, I feel like. You remember the first time your family got stared at.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in because I do have to leave soon. So Jack, we always like say we got so lucky with my brother because his behavior is just sitting. And so, however, because of that, when he does have meltdowns, it's traumatic. I now have emetophobia, which is fear of throwing up or others throwing up, because when Jack was little and he would get the flu, he would scream while he threw up. And you'd hear it throughout the whole house because he didn't know what was happening. And I remember that extremely vividly. And now, like, I don't even drink to the point where I feel sick. Like, I don't. And that's not saying it's his fault. Like, it's my fear, you know.
It's part of it. Yeah, it is.
And he doesn't know what's going on. I don't like having it's no control of your body too. So like, but now actually, as he's getting older, he's getting these symptoms of anxiety and OCD that are probably genetic from my dad, but because he can't talk, we don't know. And so then he has more meltdowns. And so that is kind of, it's harder for me to go home. Because then, like, one time I went home and he just growled the whole time I was at home for the night. And mom was like, I don't know why he's doing that. He never does this. It's just because you're, and I was like, and I know it's maybe just because it's something out of his routine.
Right.
And so, like, as a sibling, that's like your brother. And you'd think, you know, my roommates tell me stories and they're like, yeah, my brother ran home and hugged me. My brother growls the entire time I'm home. Like, so, and it's just because I'm not part of his routine anymore. And so that really is just it's not as interesting as running through naked, but
when I go home, like if I obviously I live with my husband and things now, but if I go home, my brother, basically my parents turned what used to be like where Connor and I lived, you know, in our bedrooms, they turned it into like a 1-person apartment, basically. So Connor has that whole space. So like, you know, I think last year for Christmas, my husband was back with his family at the time. We were just, you know, we were engaged and I was here, and I know exactly how that feels because Connor kept coming into my room and being like, so you're in my space? Like, just looking at me, giving me the look, flickering on the lights, telling me like, I know you're here. And so like, it's not obviously the same as growling, but like out of that routine where it's like, Connor just had to keep coming in and being like, so you're here. You're going to stay here tonight? This is my room now. Like, can you leave me alone? And I was like, I'm leaving you alone. Get out. Fighting with a sibling who not only is autistic, but like fighting with a brother who's deaf. I never won any fight because Connor could close his eyes. And that was the end of the fight because if he can't see me signing, unless I touch him, we're done. Yeah. I'll never forget. We fought over computer time one time and he finally closed his eyes, turned his back to me, and over his back signed, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. And I just never will forget yelling and being like, you've never been able to hear me. And it just always, so like fighting with a sibling who, is autistic in general is hard because of like, there are times where I can remember like Connor getting upset and I felt protective over than my mom or whoever Connor decided he was angry at. And then like, you know, you're trying not to, but then you get angry. And so then Connor smacks me. I'm going to smack Connor. And your mom's like, don't do that. And you're like, I'm going to do it. Like, hey, other siblings fight. I remember having a fight with my mom about that and being like, other siblings fight. Other siblings yell at each other.
That's true.
Other siblings can slam doors in other people's faces. Other siblings can do that. Or other siblings can like be mean to them, tell them they're ugly. I can't. Yep. My brother, I'm not allowed to do that because in public, people are like, oh, your brother has a disability and you just told him to shut up. How rude.
Gotcha.
And it's like, he's my brother. I can say that to him, Right. And so, I think
a good point
that was always something like behaviorally, like when Connor was young, he was Tasmanian devil. Our house was never clean. Our house was always wild, and we'd go into public and Connor would be like, wah! The deaf yell, and he'd be like touching everything and everybody. Meh, meh. And so when I would fight with my brother in the community, I always kind of remember that of like in our home, I was allowed to act like other siblings acted, where like, maybe I did slam a door in his face, or I, smacked him back, or I grabbed something from him and stole it. But in community, when people recognized that something was different about him, all of a sudden it was like negative that I was his sibling and acting like his sibling. It was like, oh my gosh, how like your mom has never told you like not to like to do that. And it was like, well, I mean, she might say it because she's my mom, but like she also recognizes that I'm his sister.
Right.
And I do that just like everybody else. I mean, so that was always when Connor would have public behaviors, that when we were kids, that was always a thing where I would feel this weird thought of like, oh my God, he just pushed me. I'm going to push him back. Oh wait, if people see me and they realize he's deaf or they realize he's autistic, am I going to be like, are people going to be mean to me because you're not nice enough to your brother? He's different.
How is this playing out?
Yeah. So it was always a weird, like fighting with a sibling on top of them having a behavior or whatever the situation was. It always was a weird thing as a kid. I remember being like, wow, can I do that? He is my brother, but can I do that?
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
It is, but it's important to absolutely feel your feelings in those moments. And even as an adult, that comes up. For Zach, he was seeing an OT at one point that wanted to collaborate with me about some behaviors and get some background. And so he said, yeah, I saw him today and he was being kind of, and I said, he was an asshole.
Yes.
And he said, oh, well, you don't,
an asshole.
I know. And he said, oh, you don't have to say that. I'm like, I do, and I can. I can't say that. I'm his brother and I live with him.
Because he has a disability doesn't mean he's not an asshole.
Right.
He is. And most days he wants to be.
Yes. And it's okay.
Melina, you're shaking your head yes. Does that resonate with you?
My brother just gets an attitude for no reason all the time. I'm like, you're acting like a teenage girl right now. And he'll just be like mouthing off at me. I'm like, yeah, just walk away. Because I'm done with this conversation. I'm done.
Yeah. Did you have any behaviors out in public that you were embarrassed by, or did you handle them?
When he was younger, he would act out a lot. Like just when he was overstimulated and would like scream and stuff. And like when we would go to church, the only way he could sit out in the congregation was if he was playing on his DS or playing on a phone. And people would sitting around, turn around and give him dirty looks because you're letting your kid be on a phone while a sermon's going on.
Right.
And it's just, I don't know, maybe it's the type of church we went to, a small little country church, and they didn't really get it, but he couldn't go to Sunday school. He didn't want to go to Sunday school.
Right.
And he just wanted to sit there on his phone, and that just wasn't good enough for a lot of people. And they didn't get it.
They didn't know the full story.
No.
They didn't know why.
And so the dirty looks and stuff, I'd always just look at them and glare right back. And I still do that. Like we went to Home Goods the other day, and my brother was pushing the cart, and this lady walked by and trying to squeeze through. He was trying to move the cart, and she just shoulder checked him to get through. And I was like, oh, no. I'm going to go talk to her, because you definitely don't do it to my brother. Don't do it in general, but
right.
I don't know. It's just frustrating.
It is frustrating. It is frustrating.
I have to ask, just in addition to the dirty looks, has anybody ever gotten that comment from somebody? And it's usually somebody a little older who will say something like, oh, nothing a good ass whooping wouldn't cure, or something.
I was a kid.
Yes.
When you were a kid. And I used to just want to turn to them and say, well, you just go on ahead and try it.
That's right. You grab it. You see what happens.
And you just let us know how that works out for
That's
you.
right.
My parents tried spanking Zion when he was a kid, and it just had the reverse effect that you wanted it to. It would make him more mad. It didn't work. And kind of what you were saying, it's always someone a little bit older, but it's also other moms that would judge my mom in public. Like she would be trying to calm Zion down in a meltdown at Walmart, and someone would be like, you need to get your kid in control. You need to get your kid under control. But the thing is, their kid probably doesn't have autism, and that wasn't even a thought when this lady was getting on to my mom, you know? She was just saw my mom, saw a crying kid, and just felt the need to make a rude comment.
Being protective of your mom, I think, or like either's parent for that sake, I think being protective of your mom is a big thing as a sibling too. Because I can remember times like that too, especially church. Church is a big one where, Connor was always going to be on a phone too. My brother carries around a Magna Doodle and he draws all day. And like, you know, at first it was used for communication. And then we realized Connor was this amazing artist. And, you know, watching people judge my mom. Well, why does he get that? Why does he get to do that? You know, whatever it was. And I think growing up, made me and my mom closer. And obviously then it made me more protective because of things like that, where you're like, my mom's doing the best she can today.
You kind of see what your parents go through.
Yeah, because then we're going to get in the car and she's going to cry about this whole interaction. I'm going to watch my mom cry in the car because of you. Yeah. So it's not because of my brother. It's because of you.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's also like being protective of her, like during meltdowns though, like when you're like my brother, not so much anymore, like kind of to tie it back into the question, my brother doesn't have any violent outbursts anymore. And when he does, it's usually something, it's not usually violent. And if it is, it's towards himself. It's a cry for help, and it has more to do with his mental health. But like as a kid, man, like we had some police 911 calls made, and my brother would especially act out whenever my dad was out of town. And so a lot of the times when my mom was fighting him, like I took a class learning how to restrain him in case I ever needed to do so, which I did. And there was a lot of times where it was traumatic to witness, and I had to step up and like protect my mom and my little brother. Is what it felt like.
So do you guys feel that maybe you have a little PTSD from?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. My mom was also like, you know, when you work in this field, my mom has forever, there's a thing called MANT. And like, you know, if you work in a residential setting, like you learn how to safely restrain somebody or safely keep somebody from hurting themselves, obviously. Right. And my mom was a MANT instructor. So I can remember being young and like my mom showing other people how to do MANT on me, because she knew how to do it on Connor. And so she'd be teaching and she'd be like, so this, if you have a child, like, and like, you know, you're trying to save him from running into the road, like, this is how you do it. And so I can remember that. And sometimes like, in my line of work, I have had to go into restraints. And I one time did do that where I went into a restraint and came out of it and it like nothing happened. I was not hurt. The client was not hurt. Like nothing was bad. It was more of a safety thing where we were trying to, you know, save somebody from doing something harmful to themselves. And then like, I remember getting in my car and just having a full meltdown and not realizing why. And it was because I was like, oh my God, I remember watching my dad do that to my brother and being like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Like, that's weird. That was a weird like flashback of.
It's absolutely re-traumatizing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Nicole, you were saying you have that too then?
Yeah. And I mean, for a multitude of reasons, but Nathan developed grand mal seizures in 2020. And, you know, so he's already mostly nonverbal. He's got insane OCD, and then he's developed these seizures. So it's like you can't communicate to him, you can't do anything like that. He can't warn you. And there was an instance where I was back home visiting, and fortunately things had like just worked out to where I was at home. And it was not even 15 minutes after I got home that I heard my younger sister screaming my name. And that is like, you never forget a sound like that. And I came running, and he had a seizure, and he had hit his head on one of the cabinets and split his head open. So I come down to my sister screaming. He's lying in this pool of blood. And, you know, I took charge. I came in and I'm holding him. I'm pressing the wound to my hand. For a moment there, I thought he died in my arms.
Oh no.
And yeah, and it was really intense. And then, you know, like we called the paramedics, they came in, you know, we took care of things, and he, you know, fortunately he was okay. And he started to wake up and started to try to struggle to get out of my arms. And I had to explain to the firefighters, he dropped his Lego. He will not stop moving until we find his Lego. So had to go find his Lego. Like, you know, so you're dealing with a traumatic thing anyway, but then also having to explain to the paramedics, okay, well, we got to turn off all the lights. We got to get him his jackets. We got to put his shoes on. Like, they didn't understand why we couldn't just take him out to the ambulance. And like, nope, there's a process because he's awake now. Mm-hmm. So after that was done, you know, it was just like, I immediately, you know, we called my mom, she came back. She went to the hospital. So it was me and my sister at home, and we were like, you know, trying to clean everything up. As soon as they left the house, I ran to the bathroom and just threw up. And ever since then, I'm super jumpy around loud noises. I think about that all the time, you know, that incident, you know, and not even to speak on my poor sister who, like, she was blaming herself because she took her eyes off him for 2 seconds, you know, so it builds this. Yeah, it builds this trauma, and you don't even fully realize it necessarily until certain things happen. You know, a door slams and you're jumping because, oh my God, that means somebody fell. A loud noise means that Nathan's fallen again, and maybe this time he won't get up. You know, there's a lot of stuff. And I know that's like, it's not everybody, fortunately, not everybody has to deal with things that are that severe, but there's still always that fear that something could happen. You know, your sibling walks into traffic, your sibling jumps into a pool. There is always that fear, and you can develop the trauma, even if you haven't had to experience it, just from anticipating it. Mm-hmm. So then when it's something like that does happen, it makes the trauma all the worse and stick even harder.
Wow.
I remember when Zach moved out when I was, I guess he would have been 12. I can't remember, but I was a kid, and it had just been years of that constant fear. We're going to run out into the road and just always being on edge, always in fight or flight. Mm-hmm. And then the first time that the house was quiet, still couldn't relax. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It was the weirdest thing. And it's, you know, you can finally sit down and you don't have to worry about anything. You can have friends over. The house is clean.
Because that was so foreign to you.
Yes.
To have those feelings.
And I sat down, and it's just, it was almost like I needed chaos around me or something because I didn't know how to function. Mm-hmm. Wow. It was really weird.
Yeah. Colby, what about you with behaviors with your sister?
I kind of classify behaviors as public behaviors and private behaviors. So public behaviors, going back to Walmart, someone mentioned Walmart, and it reminded me of one really clear incident. So my sister, she's obsessed with, back then she was obsessed with Play-Doh, and then she would do like loud screeches. So as soon as we would walk in, it was just me and her, she'd run, like sprint to the Play-Doh aisle. And I would have to take off after if I wasn't holding on to her real tight. So I'd get her, we'd be trying to leave, and she would take off again. And one of the older Walmart people, I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure I got on fire because of what they said, said, you need to put a leash on her. Oh, and and I mean, you have to know something's, I mean, she had like an autism shirt on. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I just want people to be more observant because it got under my skin so much. And then, you know, we could be sitting at dinner at Olive Garden or somewhere, and she would do a loud screech, and you just get every single eye turns and looks at you, and you can hear them all start talking, and then it just kind of sours the mood, and we're all just kind of like, okay, what do we do now? And then it just kind of ruins the mood, and I don't blame her at all, but like, it's just a lack of understanding, or maybe people putting themselves in our shoes and be like, you know, maybe she has something going on, or maybe there's more to it than just the parents are letting her screech. Right. And then for at home behaviors, we would always have to, I remember, lock doors. Everything was locked. The fridge was locked. I had 2 or 3 locks because if it was unlocked, she would go and just dump or rip all the food, pour it on the floor. We'd wake up and the whole fridge would be empty. She would dump everything on the floor.
So would you just like wake up? Would you wake up and see that happening? I mean, how did you feel when that was going on?
Usually we could hear it. Okay. Oh, we'd wake up and see it. I remember one woke up, it was Christmas, woke up and everything was all over the floor. We're like, oh, she was cooking last night. So,
goodness.
And then as far as like locking doors, she loved to run. So we had to get special locks for the front door so she wouldn't run out, because we lived on a busy street too. the school had to get a gate put up because they had just an open playground and streets all the way around. So because of her, they had to get a gate because she would just run out. I remember one day she just ran out of the school, and I think it was my mom or dad were walking by and saw her, and she had left school because they weren't watching her close enough.
Oh my heavens.
I mean, there's tons of behaviors, but
wow.
Isn't it funny to think of the things that, like, I don't know if I have that same thought, Colby, where like there's things that I can remember that because of my brother, like a school implemented, like, or like I lived in a neighborhood and all of a sudden we had a sign that said like deaf autistic child at play. And it was like, well, we never had that sign before. Other kids were playing in this yard, but like now because he's deaf and autistic, now we have a sign. Or like you saying like, oh, the school had to get a gate. Or these things that like, oh yeah, that was because of my sibling. Like that's why you do that now.
My brother's a big part of the reason as to why there are harnesses on school buses.
Harnesses on school buses.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yes. So before we wrap this up, do you guys, I'm going to open it up if you want to talk about anything else, but when we do wrap it up, I do want to go around and just say like a positive, what was I going to say, trait or memory that you have of your sibling or how he is now, like a positive attribute. Unless you guys want to talk about anything else before we wrap it up. Kara, do you have any final thoughts on topics? Or?
I do. I have one.
Okay.
And when we were off air, it was suggested a couple times dietary needs.
Oh,
Can we throw that out there?
I
because
forgot about
it affected you guys too.
Yeah, I was gonna say in that first when we first were talking, everybody like I heard Colby say it, Nicole say it, everybody kind of like talked about different things and like I think in general, I don't know about everybody else, but like my brother has a pretty strict, like we're going to eat pizza, chicken, nuggets, hot dog, chocolate milk, ice cream. Like we're probably not going to go try Greek food tomorrow. And then growing up, because a large part when we were growing up, autism could have been, they were like, oh, well, if you change their diet, it might change their behavior.
We can cure them.
And yeah, we can cure them. And so my entire childhood, I ate fish sticks and bananas, and I will never probably eat another fish stick my entire life.
Because of your brother.
Because that's what we ate. We only ate like 5 foods. I was not allowed to eat anything with apples because they thought apples made Connor aggressive. Yes. And so like I didn't have apple juice until I was probably in like the 6th grade because we couldn't have it in our house. We were lactose intolerant. We were not. I had never had dairy until I was in high school. Like,
well, did you like the apple after you had it?
I love apples. I love apple pie. I love apples, but it's like I wasn't allowed to have it for so long. And so, yeah, to hear other people, that was something it's funny just to hear. It's something you forget that like you went through, and then you're like, oh yeah, that probably is other people's life too. I forget that that's like one of those things that I had to do where I had to eat fish sticks all the time.
We always talk about the gluten-free was like, it was popular way back
gluten-free when we were kids.
Yes. And no dairy was the thing back then to try and make your autistic child behaviors better.
No
and
Kool-Aid.
To talk.
We weren't allowed to drink anything dyed.
Right. The dyes were out.
Yeah. Everything.
All the weird special milks.
Yes.
Yes. And now it's all over the place. Everyone's...
It's super popular to be all those things.
Yes, right.
Zion had like a lot of allergies as a kid. Like he was allergic to like rice, like a bunch of different things. But luckily it never really affected me. Like I still got to eat what I wanted to eat.
Okay.
So I don't have as much to contribute. But like still to this day, Zion doesn't, he's not very adventurous when it comes to eating. And he likes his same old. But one thing, like as a kid, he could not eat anything mixed. I don't know if that's like kind of a common thing for people on the spectrum, but like
touch.
Yeah,
Connor's thing.
yeah. And if it did, it was just weird. Like that was a sensory thing for him. But,
Okay. What about you, Melina? Did your brother have dietary issues?
Kind of like she said, like he really only ate hot dogs, chicken nuggets, fish sticks growing up until he turned 18 and wanted to go to college. And then he just like sprouted into this person. And for his birthday last year, he was like, let's go to a Brazilian grill. And we're like, who are you? Brazilian, like, I don't know. And so now he just like, he wants to try everything. And it's so weird. Yeah. It's like, I just like overnight a flip and a switch. I don't know.
Did it affect your food? Like, did your family have to eat they still let you guys eat what you want to eat. It was just
he had his own separate.
He had his own separate. Okay, gotcha.
Every plate in our house growing up, on the topic of food as well, because of behaviors, every plate in our house was plastic. I can't remember until I was much older that we never had a real like glass or something plate.
Threw it or got mad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We always had like plastic cups, and it wasn't just like because we were kids and like that's fun and they look cool, but like I can remember my brother sometimes would grab stuff and start breaking it. And so I can remember very vividly like a day where all of a sudden between my grandparents and my parents, anytime we went anywhere, we were going to eat off of a plastic plate or a paper plate, or we didn't have glass cups. We were going to not have that because if Connor had a behavior while we were out or doing something, he couldn't hurt himself.
Gotcha.
And so I can remember that phase too of like, oh, we changed our diet and you have all plastic things.
Colby, Nicole, what about you? Was your dietary at home different because of your sibling?
Oh yeah. Well, we were definitely like, we were on the gluten-free stuff for a while, but also like my sister in oldest age next to me would also like at times refuse to eat any of the special dietary stuff. So I would have to see my mom spend hours making basically at least 2 different meals, if not 3 sometimes, just because she didn't want to force us, but that was really hard on her. And then, there came a time when, because of all of the different, financial situations that we went through where we couldn't afford to eat like regular food, and any money that we had would have to go to the specialty stuff. So we were on our church's like basically food pantry program. So there was a lot of stuff that was meant to be more like you put it in food storage for emergency situations type of thing. So It's like, it was not great food. It was the same thing over and over and over again because the boys had to have their specialty food. So we got whatever was left. And that was really rough sometimes.
Oh, I bet. Colby, what about you?
I'd say kind of what everyone else has been saying early on. Tons of allergies, lots of the gluten-free. I mean, they went through everything. And then we were also almost 2 hours away from all those specialty stores. So my mom would make a lot of homemade stuff, or they would make those special trips to go get those gluten-free or certain items. And I also know that my sister had pica, which people don't know, that's just you eat everything. And so she didn't want to do any kind of diet. She'll eat anything.
Right.
So that was that was the struggle. So she would, they were trying to do this whole gluten-free or do all the diets, but she just wanted to eat anything. She needed crayon if she wanted to, So
yeah, right.
It's just, I just remembered the struggle of us all, like, yeah. And then you have to like protect your food because she'll eat. She can't feel full ever. She'll just keep eating.
Wow.
And so you have to protect and like be defensive with your plates. But
oh gosh. So why don't we just go around the room and on the phone, and let's just say like one positive memory you have or positive trait you like about your sibling, and maybe wrap it up from there. So do you want to start, Hannah?
Yeah, I'll start. Despite everything, I would not change anything about Zion or my life. I think he's taught me a lot of valuable lessons, and I think that how I am as a person can partly be credited to the fact that he is my brother. But Zion is incredibly empathetic. He feels things very strongly, and he is always the first one to comfort me anytime I'm sad. And he knows everything about me. And honestly, like he's my best friend, but he's also just like the kindest person I know. And I could share so many positive memories, but I guess what I'll say is I'm just really proud of who he is today and how close we've become. I wouldn't change anything.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Nathan?
I was going to say, I might change a few things about him. But
that's okay. That is why we're here.
But I love him. I do. And I think I'm really proud of him because, I mean, we talk a lot about, this was our experience. This was really hard for us. And I think a lot of it was really difficult for him too, not being able to communicate. And on some level, if he injures himself, he doesn't feel it in the moment, but eventually he gets to that red zone and then he realizes that, this is really hard. It's taken a long time to find the level of supports that he needs to be really successful, but he's in a really good place now. And I just remember this time all through development where he just always seemed just angry, especially puberty, just angry all the time. And now, like in the last 3 years or so, if we're just riding together in the car, he's just more giggly. And he's like, he'll start to give me things sometimes, or if he has a headache, he'll put my hand on his head and want me to actually like comfort him, which he never used to really care about me one way or the other. And so it's nice to kind of see that it's been a long time coming.
Oh,
yeah.
Gosh. Austin?
Oh, I'll get emotional. My brother is my biggest inspiration. And I would think that like he's my best friend, like all of those things. And I mean, it's just a different world. And I think if Connor wasn't who he is and has the diagnosis he has, I wouldn't be who I was. My family would never have been the way it is. My family wouldn't have been able to advocate like it does. I would have not have had my mom and seen what a strong woman looks like and what it looks like for someone to fight for their kid, and to know what that means. And same with my dad. I have a dad who, especially in a community where a lot of the times dads aren't as seen, and dads don't always, especially with deaf and autism, he took the time and he learned and is a huge advocate, and people are jealous of the fact that my dad does that, like things like that. And to have such a wide, vast family that everybody cares. And, to now have a husband who in his spare time, when we were first meeting, took time to, learn sign language because of my brother. And it showed me a part of my husband that I love. And is part of the reason I fell in love with him. All of that wouldn't have happened without Connor. And I know for a fact I would not be the nurse I am without my brother. I would not probably be a nurse without Connor. And I know I wouldn't take care of people like I do now. I could have been in this field and had no relationship. And I know I would not have been as strong an advocate and educator that I am. So, I love my brother.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well said. Melina?
I love my brother very much.
Yes.
And as he's gotten older, our relationship's gotten so much stronger. And he is one of my best friends. And
oh, that's good.
I look forward to seeing him, and he always gets excited to see me. And we just have a good relationship. And he's very into the new Beetlejuice movie. We went and saw it a month ago. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite memories, this was a few weeks ago. He was in my car. We were going to Spirit Halloween because he was Beetlejuice for Halloween.
Okay.
And he wanted to have the song Tragedy put on, which is an older song.
It's a good song. I don't know
who it's by. You know who it's by? Okay.
Well, not right at the moment because I'm getting old and I can't. Things don't jump right out at me, but I know the song.
But he put the song on and he turned it up full volume and was screaming the lyrics. And it felt like it just felt normal,
Yeah,
and I was
good.
Feels like I'm just hanging out with my friends and it was awesome. So I love my brother.
Oh, I love that. And what's his name again?
Tanner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good job. Okay. Nicole?
Well, for Nathan specifically, it can be hard sometimes to know how present he is in the moment. But something that makes those moments really special is when you can tell that he's present. And he's a stinker. He's a stinker, and he knows he's a stinker. For example, when I was visiting, just last week, we're sitting in the bed, and he likes to sit there and he watches YouTube, and I'm just sitting there with him, keeping an eye on him. And under the blanket, he presses his foot against my leg, and it was ice cold. So I shrieked a bit hey, don't do that. And he kind of stops and he looks at me for a second and then he does it again. Aww. And I was just hey. And over the next hour, he would periodically press his foot against my leg and then giggle, and he would do it, but he would wait long enough for me to put my guard down, and then he'd do it again, and he kept giving me that side eye where he knew what he was doing. He was being a pill.
Oh, that's cute.
But
you had a moment.
I love those moments of connection because it does make them a lot more special. And with Chase specifically, watching him grow up and go through his own struggles and have his moments of because he understands that he's different from other people, but I feel that also helps with his empathy. And he has his own anger issues, but that means he can also recognize when other people are upset, and he's very forgiving. And I have my own anger issues sometimes, and there was a time where I got really mad, and then I just kind of took a breath and I was like, I'm sorry, bud, I shouldn't do that. Like, I just got upset. And he just came over and gave me a hug and said, it's okay. I understand. Anger is hard sometimes. It's just another moment of connection and clarity. So those moments just mean more. It's like, I wish they would happen more often, but they do mean more because they are so rare.
Oh, nice. And Colby, what about you?
I would just like to say I love my sister Haley, and I know my brother and my parents would agree. She is the best hugger. She's the most real and honest person I know. You can see on her face anytime she looks at you, she'll just raise an eye and be like, I know what you're talking about, because she's there. She gets it, everything. She's the best judge of character I know. And so if I'm walking with her and she gives someone, I'm like, okay, I know she can detect something's wrong. She's the most pure joy and like happy and smile and laugh that I've ever seen on someone. And I don't know if I've ever will see it again, because she's just got, when she's happy, that's the most happy person you've ever seen. And I like to say she's definitely the best listener. I mean, she can't talk back, so me and my brother like to joke. Like to joke. We're all nervous because like she's heard so much gossip and all the dirt. If she could start talking, we always joke like, what would be her first thing she would say?
Right.
Or she'd be sick of us all.
Yeah. What secrets would she let out?
Exactly. We would be so scared. So. No, I love her. We have tons of awesome memories together, and nature walks, and I'm really into photography and taking pictures of her. And we've had a lot of good memories, and we'll have plenty more to come. So.
I love that. Kara, did you want to say something?
I do. You siblings.
Yes.
You caught me a couple times crying, I think, during this podcast. And, I'm so proud of you guys.
Right.
And where you are today and how much you love your siblings. Your siblings are very, very lucky to have you.
Yeah. I was just going to say that too. I don't know really any of you that well. I've met a couple of you, but I'm floored by you guys. You should be very proud of yourself. And you've learned a lot living with a child with a disability. I mean, I just think there's a lot of things that you guys are talking about that you had at a very young age that I, as a parent, thought of, So You're ahead of the game and you're very strong. You should be very proud of yourself. I'm proud to know you guys, and you've touched my heart. I'm going to start crying. So thank you for doing what you do and advocating for people with autism, because it means the world.
Yes, thank you.
To us parents, especially growing older, because it doesn't get easier. Yeah. And you've got to plan, as you know, lots of things. So thank you for being here, Colby and Nicole. Thank you for calling in and being here. We really appreciate it. And maybe we can touch base and have you guys on again later, at another time. So touch base in a year and see what's going on. And we love having you guys. So I'm just going to wrap it up where you can find us. You can listen to us on our website, which is navigatingadultautism.com. You can find us on Apple or Spotify. Please follow us on Facebook and on Instagram. Please give us a good review and follow us. And we appreciate these siblings, and I appreciate all you listening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Colby. Bye, Nicole. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Bye, thanks.
Thank you. Good job.